Yo, what's up, nerds? And yes, that was a fake out. This is not, in fact, a nekusar deck. Okay, nekusar is our secret commander. This is a Kenrith deck because I wanted 5 colors. I know you're saying, Hongshu, boring. Kenrith, a CDH staple commander, overpowered. Less overpowered now that Dockside's banned. Ayo. But yeah, so I thought I'd do a break from the Sharpie Cube content. Yeah, I've been working on that. I bought a box of Duskmourn the other day because it was my birthday and I wanted to treat myself. So I'm up to like 200 some cards for my Sharpie Cube. It's getting there. I'm gonna finish it and then I'm gonna show it off. But I've been thinking a lot recently. I sold my Commander collection, and I thought about getting back in the format because I really enjoy it, right? But I'm kind of sick of like boring decks, and yes, this deck is quote unquote boring, but it's not quote unquote boring. Like it's a little bit of the in between. You'll notice first off, yeah, high price, right? I'm going to proxy it, but kind of with a twist. So stick to the end for that. But anywho, this is a drawing burn deck, the Nekusar classic. I just thought it was more interesting to do it with more colors, so that's why I have Kenrith. Now, Kenrith's abilities, look at that, right? It's a whole fucking menu. You go to a restaurant, you probably have less options than when you play Kenrith. But we're really only going to focus on the target player draws a card and put a creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control, right? Because, let's be real, the other abilities are like, okay, but target player draws a card can be used to make your opponent lose life through things like Nekusar, and then bringing things back is going to be really important, because cards like Shieldred are just basically removal magnets, right? The second that hits the field, somebody wants to destroy it, Kenrith is going to be your way of getting it back. So, pretty simple. The deck itself, we have, like, Birds of Paradise to ramp. Keteric Parasite is another way to gain life, or not gain life, to burn the opponent for drawing cards. Bloom Tender for ramp. Drannith Magistrate is a stall piece. Fairy Mastermind to make your opponents, and you draw cards. Flump to make target opponent draw a card, but the other thing you can do is, if you have Flump and Orcish Bowmasters out, Orcish Bowmasters can deal 1 damage to Flump to make an opponent draw a card. When they draw that card, Orcish Bowmasters will trigger and deal 1 damage to Flump. So you could do that up to 4 times, because Flump has 4 toughness. So that's 4 card draws, you amass 4, and then you'd also get to, like, deal 1 damage to the opponent, which isn't perfect. It would be better if Flump had, like, Indestructible or something, but you're also going to be getting all the other burn triggers, so it's pretty well worth it. Harmonic Prodigy, basically just so that cards like Nekusar are going to trigger an additional time. Winter, actually I don't know if that's technically a trigger, I think that's just a static. But theoretically we want to be able to have things trigger multiple times, so it's a good include. Kami to make opponents draw more, you draw more. Nin the Pain Artist, again, another way to make your opponents draw, can also just destroy things. Bowmasters for the combo, and also just because you're going to be making your opponents draw cards, so this is just another way to keep burning them out with it. Razorkin Needlehead. So I've been looking at this card a lot recently, and you can't really see it here, but I really thought it was like a Cenobite reference, like from Hellraiser. Anywho, it's just another way to make your opponent burn for drawing cards. Red Death Shipwrecker is going to be another way to make your opponent pay for, not make them pay. It's a way to make them draw cards. It's a way to goad their creatures, and it's a way to add mana. Sorry, I cannot think today. Stormfist Crusader, again, make your opponents draw. Same with Zenith Chronicler. Cybernetic Datasmith. Basically, every turn on your turn, you'll pay 1 blue, you'll tap it, target opponent draws a card so that they'll, lose more life or whatever, and then you're also going to create a robot, which is just a 4/4 every turn, which is solid. Gearson Starn is going to make that life loss go even higher. I mean, like, Nekusar going from 1 damage to 3 damage, it's just going to be a lot more damage. I don't really know how many it's going to affect. You know, it affects Needlehead, affects Bowmaster, yeah, it affects most of the 1 damage dealers. Master of the Feast, so that they draw more cards. Academy Rector to search for certain enchantments, because there's some enchantments that are just going to help you run away with the game. Cast Dissident Mage, pretty simple. You want to be able to recast your wheels. Shieldred, great burn, great life gain. Valgoth, Tower of Souls. So, if an opponent loses life on a draw, when they draw their card for turn, you're going to get a Valgoth trigger, and then you'll get to put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. It's just going to help you spin your wheels. Winter is going to make each player draw 2 additional cards, and then it can also like reduce your opponent's hand size, because the problem with making your opponent draw cards is that if they can play them, then you're just giving them advantage, right? You don't want to give your opponents advantage, you want to win a game. Nekusar makes them draw, makes them lose life. It's basically everything you want. That's why it's a secret commander. You know, Seazon, target opponent, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player loses 2 life, draws 2 cards. That's 2 more cards to get triggers on, and then they also lose 2 life anyway. Chrome Mox for ramp, Soul Ring for ramp, Anvil of Bogarden. The small problem is they skip their discard phase so that they're gonna get to use those cards, but they'll also be drawing an additional card, so this is just another way to make them keep drawing. Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone for ramp, Howling Mine to make them draw more cards, Lightning Greaves to protect, like, Kenrith, to protect Nekusar, any of your really important things that you need protecting. We're running 3 Talismans in Nekusar's colors. Those are gonna be the main colors for the deck. Like, you see we have, like, 8 white, 8 green, and then 25, 20, 21. They're the main colors for the deck, but I really think that the supporting colors are kind of important for what the deck wants to pull off. Font of Mythos is 2 more card draws. Teferi's Puzzle Box is going to make your opponent, on their draw step, put the cards from their hand on the bottom of the library, then draw that many cards. So if they have 7 cards in hand, this is 7 extra draws that you're going to get triggers for. Vampiric Tutor, because tutors are important. Worldly Tutor, because tutors are important. You really want to... This is how you get to Nekusar, or Shieldred, or any of your really important pieces. Arcane Denial, because it's going to make them draw 2 cards, but it's also just a solid counterspell. Eldamri's Call, again, get a creature. Beast Within. The deck doesn't run a lot of removal, but I thought Beast Within is probably the most consistent removal, being able to destroy any permanent, so creatures, enchantments, artifacts, land, whatever you need to destroy, Beast Within can destroy. Fierce Guardianship, because it's a free counterspell. Flames of Anor. If you control a wizard, you can choose to instead. The chance you control a wizard isn't always that great. I mean, there's like, what, 1, 2... Are you a wizard? You're a cleric. 3, 4, 5. There's only 5 wizards in the deck, so the chance that you actually get to do more than 1 isn't great, but it's either pretty good removal, destroying either an artifact or dealing 5 damage to a creature, or it can make an opponent draw 2 cards, or make you draw 2 cards, whatever you need. If you need burn damage to possibly finish off the game, if you need to remove a creature, whatever. Wheel and Deal, any number of target opponents each discard his or her hand and draw 7 cards, and then you draw a card. That's 7 burn triggers. It's going to be really strong as long as you have a built board. Force of Will, just to counter spells. Burning Inquiry, each player draws 3, then discards 3 at random. This is giving your opponent less advantage, but 3 is still a lot to be burning for 1 mana. Cut a Deal, each opponent draws a card, and then you draw a card for each opponent who drew this way. In a 4-player game, this is each opponent draws a card, so you get triggers off of that, and then you draw 3 cards. So it's just a lot of value for you. Dark Deal, just another wheel effect. We really want to make sure that we're casting wheels, just so that the opponents keep discarding their hand. And I mean, theoretically, they could also just run out of cards before burn even kills them. Jessica's Will, again, if an opponent's drawing a lot of cards, you're going to add a lot of red mana if they have a lot of cards in hand. So just, keeping their hands full will help you out long term too with Jessica's Will. Wheel of Fortune, again, you know, it it's basically what all of their wheels are based on. It's the strongest. Making them draw 7 is going to be a lot of triggers. Windfall, again, each player discards their hand and then draws equal to the greatest number of cards discarded this way. This could be the same as Wheel of Fortune, but technically too, if you made your opponent go up to like 10, 11 cards in hand and then you Windfall, that means everybody's drawing that many. So 10, 11 triggers for everybody is going to be insane. Whispering Madness, this, again, so each player discards his or her hand, then draws equal to the greatest number of cards discarded this way. It's the same as Windfall, however, you can exile this onto a creature you control, and then when that creature deals combat damage to a player, its controller may cast a copy of the spell without paying its mana cost. And while you're not guaranteed combat damage, the fact that Kenrith can give things trample or put counters on things is just going to help you get in for damage. We also have like Fairy Mastermind, and I think a couple other flyers or just harder to block creatures. Menace, things like that. It's just going to make it a little bit more difficult, or even just swinging in with Academy Rector because your opponent doesn't want to kill that. So it just makes blocking hard. Reforge the Soul. This is the same as Wheel of Fortune, except you could cast it for 1 less, given you get it for its miracle cost. Deafening Silence. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell. This hinders you as well, but this just makes sure your opponent can't do things with all the cards you give them. Mystic Remora, and of course to Rhystic Study, because you're giving your opponents cards, but you need cards too, okay? You want to draw into more wheels, more ways to burn, things like that. Training Grounds, this is mostly just for Kenrith, so that you can make drawing a card be 1 in a blue. You can make reanimating creatures be 2 in a black. Things like that. But I imagine, Fairy Mastermind's draw ability is going to cost less. Nin the Pain Artist is going to cost less. Things like that. Like, it's not much, but it does a little bit here and a little bit there. And theoretically, it's just going to make Kenrith more consistent. Oath of Druids. This is another way to get creatures, because some of your creatures cost, like, 4 or 5 mana. You're not guaranteed to, like, get there super fast, but this is just going to be another way to help you get whatever creature you need, nekusar, Shieldred, whatever. Fevered Visions is another way to make your opponent draw cards, and it can also just deal damage to them. Phyrexian Tyranny, again, whenever a player draws a card, they lose 2 life unless they pay 2. Sure, this also affects your card draw, but this is one effect that affects you. Every other effect is going to be helping you. And if you have Shieldred out, they just cancel each other out, so you're fine. Defense of the Heart. If your opponent controls 3 or more creatures, you sacrifice it and search for 2 creatures and put them into play. My vote is usually just, like, get Shieldred, get nekusar, or, like, get Shieldred, get Sazon, get Shieldred, get Valgoth, something like that. Shieldred is probably going to be one of your picks, honestly. Shieldred is the secret commander. Smothering Tithe, if you're making your opponents draw cards, you might as well be creating treasures just to gain more value. Spiteful Visions, makes opponents draw, burns them. It's basically everything you need. Struggle for Project Purity, at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent draws a card, you draw a card for each card drawn this way. Again, like, it's just more ways to make your opponents draw. Plus, you probably draw 3 cards off of that, right? 3 cards is a good amount of cards to be drawing every upkeep on top of whatever you're already drawing. Or, whenever a player attacks you with 1 or more creatures, they get twice that many rad counters. If you don't know, rad counters, they mill? Actually, don't quote me on that. I suck at rad counters. Rad counter. Okay, so at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, if you have any rad counters, mill that many. For each non-land card milled this way, you lose 1 life and a rad counter, right? So if they attack you with, let's just say 5 creatures, right? They get 10 rad counters. So they mill 10. For each non-land card, they then lose life and a rad counter. So at very least over time, that's going to be 10 damage. It's just a way to protect yourself, especially milling 2 on top of all the draw could just run them out of cards. Force Fruition, this is what you're going to be getting with Academy Rector. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, they draw 7 cards. Usually this is bad, right? Ignore that All Caps by MF Doom was about to come on because I forgot to loop the background music. Anywho, but yeah, with like Shieldred out, right? They draw 7 cards when they cast a spell. That's 14 life they lose, right? So they can't afford to be casting spells. Even if that spell is a removal spell for Shieldred, they're still gonna draw 7, lose 14 first. So they're basically fucked. Now, the land base, expensive, okay? We are running fetch lands, full fetch lands. We're running full fetch lands. We're running Ancient Tomb for good ramp. We're running, like, alpha dual lands because, like I said, I'm going to be proxying this. Beseiju because it's good removal. Cascading Cataracts because it can be colors. City of Brass, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard. One of each basic land, basically, just in case, you know, just in case an opponent has something that, like, makes us search for a basic, like a Ghost Quarters or something. Gaia's Cradle, duh. Horizon of Progress, Islands. Urborg, so that everything can be swamps if we need it. And then Xander's Lounge. Seems odd, but again, these are the 3 colors we're playing most, so it's not a bad thing to search for. Let's just play a test hand here, alright? So, we're gonna mulligan that first hand. I think we would have to keep this one. We're gonna go Command Tower. We're gonna go... What does Savannah add? White and green? Not great. I think we're gonna go Underground Sea instead. Marsh Flats, we're gonna crack it. We're gonna search. We're gonna find a... this one. We move it to the battlefield. So we have a Badlands, and then we're going to tap Badlands and Command Tower for Razorkin Needlehead. Turn Savannah. So then we're gonna tap out. We're gonna play Teferi's Puzzle Box. So at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player puts the cards from their hand on the bottom of the library and draws that many cards. When they draw that many cards, they're then going to be taking damage off of Needlehead. Honestly, I think we would just go for it here. Play a Wheel and Deal so that each opponent discards their hand, draws 7. We get to draw a card. And then on their upkeep, they're going to put the 7 on the bottom of their library. Draw 7 more. They're going to get 7 more from Razorkin Needlehead. Yeah. Okay. So, I think we Arid Mesa. We're going to crack it. We would search for, Tropical Island. Move it to the battlefield. And then just, Gearson Starn Kellermorph. Whenever... something would deal exactly 1 damage, it deals 2 more, or Gearson Starn deals 2 more, and then we're gonna Windfall, and then each opponent's gonna discard their hand, we discard our hand. Let's just say some opponent had like 5 cards in hand, that's going to be 5 triggers from Needlehead, and then another 2 damage on each trigger from Gearson Starn, and then if they go to turn still, they would then Teferi's Puzzle Box. That's 1 for each card that they would then draw, and then another 2. So we've probably won the game from this point, right? That's basically what the deck wants to do. It's just trying to ramp out into whatever's important, and then win the game. Now, I said there was going to be a twist at the end, right? The twist is, so if you get cards proxied, you can just upload a card image, and they'll print that onto... you know, the proxy. I think the Proxy King does it. I know a couple services do it. So my current plan is I am going to just draw every card in the deck. You know, I'm just going to bring up like a whiteboard, not like a real whiteboard, but like a digital whiteboard. And I'm just going to draw whatever I please. probably that goes along with what the card is. But I'm just going to draw the entire deck. And then I'm going to get that printed because, honestly, I think it would be more interesting to play something that I've drawn and decided, and like, thought about. Plus, it gives me more time. If I'm, like, drawing Bloom Tender and then I decide, Bloom Tender's not a good fit for the deck, I can just decide to take it out. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be drawing the entire deck. And I'll probably do progress reports as I draw it. You know, show off what the cards look like, what art I came up with. Because I just think that would be, like, an interesting side thing for the channel. I haven't really done anything Commander in a while, so, like, it gives y'all your Commander fix. And it's also a little bit of that creativity thing. Let me tell you, I am terrible at art, right? So I think y'all would find this entertaining. Because I think that's, you know, a good part of what's interesting about Magic right now, is fan formats are getting bigger, right? And I think the creativity is just getting larger and larger in the fan base, you know? We have more fans proxying cards with their own art. We have Sharpie Cube becoming big, giving people... I mean, that's like a really big... Like, you have to think for Sharpie Cube, right? There's a lot of creativity that goes behind it, in making cards as interesting as possible, you know, and I feel like custom cards are just becoming bigger and bigger, so I think, really, the fan base is going to hold up Magic more than Wizards ever will, because let's be real, right? Duskmourn as a set, I'm a horror fan. I'm a really big horror fan, right? And I was honestly really let down by a lot of this, right? Like, the things that they put into it, not a lot of it felt cohesive, and I get, like, oh, it's a really big haunted house or whatever, but, you know, we have Meat Hook Massacre, too. Meat Hook Massacre took place on Innistrad, so you're telling me the sequel's on a different plane. Even if we're going the sequel's on a different plane, right, they're gonna be doing these whole, special guests, what the fuck's it called? Special guests, right? We're going to be printing special guest cards with every set now. But they couldn't reprint Meat Hook Massacre as a special guest. Meat Hook Massacre is like a $50 card at this point? You're telling me you're going to make a sequel, but you're not going to reprint the $50 card in a guest spot? Even if that really doesn't reduce the price, just something. You know, so I was disappointed by the guest includes. You know, I thought some of the cards in this were interesting, like, oh, Eye of Cthulhu from fucking Terraria. But, like, I don't know, none of it was really as horrific as I thought. A lot of it felt too spelled out. Like, we knew beforehand that this was just a never-ending haunted house or whatever. I feel like you have to have some sort of mystery going into the set. Or, like, I forget who was talking about it, right? But they have, beasties, quote-unquote, are, you know, an important thing going on in this plane, right? And the beasties wear this masks because, you know, ooh, what's behind the mask? And they'll help you out as long as, you know, you don't look behind their mask. But then in the guide to the plane, they just basically explained, oh yeah, behind the mask is, like, decaying flesh. That's so fucking boring. Where's the mystery? Like, half of horror... If you talk about, let's just say, the movie Alien, right? 1979, Alien, classic. You don't see the xenomorph throughout, like, the entire movie, right? There's so much buildup into what this thing looks like. It's killing people. It's slinking around through the air vents and whatever, and it's getting people. But we don't know what it looks like. You know, do you think that movie would be anywhere as close to as scary if we knew exactly where it looked like and where it was at all times, you know? Do you think Michael Myers would be scary if he just, like, did normal people shit? It's the things that you can't explain that are scary. You know, it would be cooler not knowing what's behind the mask, because then you gotta think about it, you know, what could be behind there? What if, you know, beasties are just, like, normal creatures, or, like, what if it's a supernatural, like, I don't know, just anything other than telling us what it is. Give us hints, give us, like, in the one Mario Tennis game, if I remember correctly, there's a windscreen for Shy Guy, where his mask falls off, and the whole crowd sees his face, and they're just shocked, right? Give us a card where we see somebody flipping up a beastie's mask and they're just horrified. You know, there needs to be some sort of suspense and horror, and it's just not here in this set. This set is just references, and I like references, right? But you can't be like, oh, Arabella, abandoned doll. It's an Annabelle reference. That's not clever. There's nothing clever to it, you know? And even if we're thinking about it, it's just, references can only take you so far. You know, Atlanok, the thrice called, is a Beetlejuice reference. Oh, it's actually an insect. Get it? Beetle, insect? Oh, that's so funny. You know, and you can bring it out with, you know, say its name. That's cool and all, but, like, it's just not taking me anywhere, right? You know, oh, it's a Beetlejuice reference. That's it. That's, what you see is what you get. I feel like there has to be more to it, otherwise the set just kind of falls flat. And in that case, if you really wanted to reference Beetlejuice, right, just make a Universes Beyond, because clearly that's where the whole thing is going, right? I think within 2 to 3 years, we're really only going to be getting Universes Beyond. I mean, we have the whole Assassin's Creed set, we had, you know, Fallout, and even in, like, promos and shit, too, now, like, we have the Cowboy Bebop promos, and yes, I like those, but it's like, you're just taking an art style in those, right? I want to see something new, I want to see something interesting, you know, even in things like Innistrad, right? We had clear references in Innistrad, right? We had, you know, Civilized Scholar turns into Homicidal Brute. Well, that's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But it just felt more interesting, I guess, is how I would say it. And I guess referencing was kind of new at that point. Not to say it's, like, new, but, like, that wasn't Magic's whole thing, you know? Magic referenced fantasy. But to make a whole set just be, it's a horror reference, is kind of disappointing to me. And, you know, like, even glimmers, oh, it's that glimmer of hope that's, like, leading, you know, the survivors, but I don't know. Also, is Reluctant Role Model just Dwight from fucking Dead by Daylight? Like, is that what they did? Because that's who he looks like. And I don't know. It felt like there could have been more here than what they gave us, because a lot of it just felt like surface level, it's a reference to this, it's a reference to that. And then we also had things like Fear of the Dark. I guess, you know, I guess you could make a fear manifest, you know, or like it's the physical form of said fear, but like some of it I just find hard to believe, and I find just not interesting. Like, Fear of Imposters enters counter target spell, its controller manifests dread. That's just, Fear of Imposters, why isn't that like a clone? You know, it's a clone that, you know, burns the original creature's controller over time because they're afraid of it or something, right? Why isn't it like, you make a manifest and the manifest is a copy of something? Because that just gets across Fear of Imposters better than counterspell manifest dread, you know? I guess, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm just cynical with the new sets. Maybe it's because I think the set right before this, right? I think Bloomborough was a great set, honestly. I think we saw a new setting, right? We saw, you know, just something new happening. It was a kind of unrelated story to everything else in the Magic universe, but it worked like that, right? But we go to, like, Duskmourn, and we're including more, you know, characters that we've already seen before. And it's like, okay, so why am I supposed to care that Kaito is there? Kaito is a planeswalker, right? He can just fuck off as soon as something scary happens. You know, that's not a problem for him. You know, why am I worried that the Wandering Emperor is here? When the Emperor gets hit, she absorbs the fucking kinetic energy and then gets stronger. So, like, why am I afraid of her getting attacked? You know, things like that, where I just can't care. Because these are, like, I mean, sure, they're not planeswalkers anymore, but they're almost godlike figures in a sense, you know, the amount of power that we've seen them wield throughout the story, and I'm supposed to believe that this little doll with a knife is, like, a threat to them? I don't know. I don't know. So, that was a bit of a tangent, sorry. But anywho, I'm going to be drawing these cards. That's been MTG Man, and, yeah, signing off. Peace, y'all.